Welcome again to the Solid Signal podcast for the week of June 8th, 2015. In a recent trip through Burbank, California, I passed by the building, it's the office building that's near Universal Studios. I remember many years ago passing this office building and seeing that giant Universal logo on it. And when I passed it again, it now says Comcast, NBC, Universal, and I got to thinking it's a good thing that they didn't merge with Time Warner because they're running out of space on this giant building. And it brought to mind the idea of merger mania. It does seem like in the last 10 years or so, we've seen a lot of consolidation within the telecommunications industry. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Hard to know. Remember, folks, if you're old enough, that 50 years ago there was really one national telecommunications company, AT&T. There were a couple of other small regional phone companies, but one giant. There was really only one gigantic software provider 20 years ago, Microsoft, and they owned the browser market. The government took action in both of these cases to actually split up these giants, and in Microsoft's case to penalize them for having taken over the browser market, perhaps using unfair practices. But now the government seems all too happy to allow most mergers to take place. It's true that the Comcast-Time Warner cable merger was just one step too far. But certainly, most of these mergers are being allowed, and we haven't heard anything from the government, any threat of any breakup rumor for coming on decades, really, if you think about it. The government isn't investigating Google, and they're not investigating, Yahoo or Apple or any of these companies that have these sort of monolithic holds on the markets that they control. Things have changed a little bit, that's for sure. And I have to ask myself, and I'm sure you're asking yourself as well, is it for the better? My intention on this podcast is not to get political, but I will say there are going to be some people who say the government got too involved and did too much breaking up of companies in the 20th century, and they're just kind of rectifying that now. And then there are others that will say the government's lost its way and that they're letting big business have sway over their decisions. I think, honestly, neither thing is true. The government isn't looking at breaking up Google because in the world of the internet, there's no such thing as a monopoly. And even if you want to go with a different search provider, there's Bing, and you really, you're not losing anything from that. You can live a Google-free lifestyle if you do want to. And the same thing with telecommunications. It's just not true that there's one provider for your TV entertainment anymore or your telephone anymore. So the government doesn't necessarily need to step in to protect the consumer in the way that they did back in the 20th century. That's one way that the internet has leveled the playing field, and that's part of why the internet is so important and why understanding the need for a neutral internet that's also fair to business is really, really the issue of our day. I've talked before about net neutrality, and I've tried to present a very balanced way of looking at it. I think that most folks feel like it's not fair to let companies take advantage of them, but then again, it's also not fair to unfairly shackle companies with regulations that will keep them from innovating. The most important thing to realize is that the internet itself is such a new phenomenon and such a transformative one. It just touches everything, and it's touched our legal landscape in such a way that we just don't have to have these kind of conversations about monopolies like we once did. But yet, the internet itself is a generation old, and we probably will not understand its true impact for another 50 to 70 years. Of course, until then, I'll be out there posting podcasts, having a great time. Have a great week.